the rain and snow. Good morning, everyone. A little housekeeping before we begin. For those of you that perhaps have never been to the world stage, or perhaps haven't been at this location, how many of you, just for my own brain, frequented the world stage, the original world stage across the street? Thank you. How many of you have been in this room before to hear a concert? For those of you who are here for the first time, raise your hand. Okay. So this is for you. Restroom, directly back. Just before you exit, look to the right. Right? So you don't have to do that with young people. They hold on to what they've got. But things begin to change. All right. Let me just say at the outset that I am honored and humbled to have this opportunity to greet you and welcome you to this commemoration of the passing of a loved one, a true loved one, not only loved by family, but friends, and for me, fellow aficionados. For music lovers, for lovers of the arts, Doc Weathers was magical. I always said that this guy's so quiet. He stays to himself, at least in my experience. But then we would start talking about the arts, and most specifically, the music. And then I said, okay, now we're on the same wavelength. And you could visit practically any venue in Southern California, and chances are beyond. And who's sitting in the first row, and at worst, the second row? There's Doc. I said, see, all is right with the world. Doc is here. And a very special man. My only regret is that my interactions with Doc Weathers were relatively limited, but in those interactions I had with him, he was a delight to interact with. Again, welcome to all of you. We are here not only to commemorate Doc's passing, but also to celebrate his life, because far too many services are downcast. Oh, God, what are we going to do? Well, given the life that Dr. Weathers lived, all the joy he provided for all of you in the audience, myself and others, this is a special occasion. And I'm so honored to have this opportunity to welcome you here to the world stage in Leimert Park. Or is it the Leimert Park Village? Leimert Park Village. I'm not going to take any more time because, as I think most of you know, if not all of you, sometimes these services run a little long. And we're going to try to avoid that and do what we can to celebrate Doc and all that he has given to all of us, and then get on with our lives. With that, I want to bring forth a wonderful vocalist, and she's going to, I guess you'd say, officially greet you in song. Miss Elena Gilliam is going to. See, the manners go right down the drain, right at the outset. And she's going to be accompanied by some stellar musicians who you will meet a little later this morning. So with that, once again, those of you who are coming in now, welcome to the world stage. And finally, let me just indicate that it's only appropriate that this service take place in this hallowed hall of music and other performing arts. I think Doc is sitting in that second row, if not the first row, at that big bandstand in the sky, and he's smiling down on all of us. Miss Elena Gilliam.
Thank you, Chet. I just wanted to say it's an honor to be here for Dr. Weathers and Henry Franklin and friends. Thank you for having us and honoring his name. It must have been cold there in my shadow to never have sunlight on your face. You were content to let me shine, 'cause that's your way. You always walked a step behind, and I was the one with all the glory, and you were the one with all the strength. A beautiful face without a name for so long. A beautiful smile to hide the pain. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I would like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Get that smile. Ooh, it might have appeared to go unnoticed, but I've got it all here in my heart. I want you to know I know the truth, of course I know it, that I would be nothing without you. Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I would like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Did you ever know you were my hero? You're everything, everything, everything I'd like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings. Fly, fly so high against the sky, so high I almost touch the sky. Oh, fly, fly so high against the sky, so high I almost touch the sky. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank God for you, the wind beneath my wings. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, Elena, thank you so much. That was very nice beginning for us. Today, we're celebrating the life of Doc, as a lot of us call him, and Skookie, what his family called him. And that was a new thing that I learned in reading about a lot of his accomplishments. One thing that we shared in common in our jazz community, especially those that lived in Los Angeles, was keeping up with the politicians and elections around town. So there were many tributes that were extended to Doc that I will present to the family. One from the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. We also have a wonderful tribute here from State Senator Sidney Kamlager from the Senate District 30. We also have one from the Board of Supervisors, Holly Mitchell, who extended their gratitude and tributes to Doc for his longstanding commitment to the political purpose within our community. And these will be extended to the family for your commemoration and for our recognizing that he was more than a community member. He was an activist for us. There are other acknowledgments for today too, because there were a lot of people involved in this event. The family, thank you very much for allowing us to have this commemoration for Doc. It meant that we could all come together after this horrible pandemic and really commune together to express our appreciation for him being in our life. Another special thanks is to Dwight Tribble and the World Stage for opening up your space and being so generous with your time, staff, and resources. We really appreciate it because this is a space, this is our sacred space that we knew that we could commune with jazz. And Dwight has delivered and we have received so many exciting performances here. I also want to recognize the musicians, Henry Franklin, the skipper, Theo Saunders, where you heard on piano. We have Yayo Morales on drums, Theodris Avery on saxophone, and Elena Gilliam on vocals. So thank you very much for everyone, especially the family, for being in here and sharing his life, his commitment, his values with us. And please let this day be a joyous celebration of William Doc Weathers. I will read Karen Bass's tribute to, oh, that's right, Congress. I forgot Congress. We went long and far because the United States Congress, in honoring the life of William ROLFE Weathers, MD, in whose memory we pay tribute and reverence on March 3rd, 2022, on behalf of the 37th Congressional District of California, I express my deepest sympathy. Karen Bass. Also, next we will have coming to the stage is Brenda Shockley.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brenda Shockley. I am listed here as talking about Doc's career. And as I drove over, I thought how I knew Doc for 52 years. In 1970, I was a senior in law school, and I got a job at what was then called the South Central Healthcare Multipurpose Center, now known and in various iterations as the Watts Health Foundation and the Watts Health Center. I arrived there to do and work because in those days, well, this is an audience that will know. It was HEW back in those days. And it was a comprehensive health center that addressed the notion that health was more than medicine. And along with later the creation of the Martin Luther King Hospital and Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science, was part of really a community development movement that was rooted in providing health care to the community. And the big difference being that it wasn't just to come and get your x-rays or that there was supportive services. I was working for the attorney who was online who would help with evictions and others, criminal matters in the community. And it was there that I think must have been within the first days that I met Doc, who had arrived. I think he'd come from DC, where he'd done a residency, and he came to the radiology department. He, myself, and Dr. Clyde Oden, many of you may know, we all started right there together. And then there are any number of people, and I think it's from talking to Clint, so many people that we worked with are no longer with us or were not able to come. But I think I speak for all when I talk about the connection that we sort of had as in a work community, in a health environment, but also just the steadiness and the commitment that couldn't have been exemplified more than the commitment that Doc Weathers had. And you can see that in the fact that I came, stayed a couple of years, moved on to San Francisco to start practicing law. Others came, stayed a while. Others came and stayed a long time. Bill stayed till the end. And though we never worked together again, all these years, I think if I just describe, you'll all know how comforting it is to move around a world where you see someone over a period of over 50 years, and every time, generally at a music venue or an art venue or just an activist political activity in the community, you're always glad to see him, and he's always glad to see you. And as I drove over and I saw the beautiful sky and the fluffy, fluffy clouds, all I could say is, my life is better for knowing Doc Weathers. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I should not have been on the yard with the students this morning. My voice all of a sudden decided to just act up. So I have some water. I am a family friend since I was in the 9th grade. I was trying to figure out a way to sum up over 40 years of memories and experiences, and I kept rambling in my mind, so I just wrote it because that would keep me focused and get me off the stage a lot faster. So I will share mine and my family's experience. I've been blessed with an amazing family, and even more blessed to have many people come into our family with no title other than friend, but stayed long enough to become family. Thanks to my mom's St. Louis best friend and family members, Beverly and Tootie Heath, who introduced my mom to the man we're celebrating today, William R. Weathers. He had nicknames: Skookie by his family and friends, Doc by his friends and patients, but my family fondly knew him as Bill or Weathers, but mostly Bill. I remember the day I met him. I must have been in the 9th or 10th grade. 3 of us. So you can imagine what shenanigans we had going on during that time. It was many years ago, but over time, and it didn't take long, Bill embraced us all. And I mean all of us. My siblings, our entire family, our friends and their families, boyfriends, girlfriends, and so on. If we liked them, so did he, but when I look back on it, I was thinking back last night, we were really just part, not just part, but we were part of his entertainment. The material for some of his jokes and shenanigans. This I know for sure. We all know he absolutely loved jazz and black art, but my family and I were blessed to experience another side of him. Yes, he was a jokester, real funny, but a quiet behind the scenes funny. Like he really did some silly, funny stuff, but in order to catch it, you had to be quick. He was witty, quiet, snuck it in under the rug, but it was quite funny. He had nicknames for all of us, everyone. My best friend, he had a nickname for. My mom, he had a nickname for, and they would change over time. I just last night found out about a nickname I had that I didn't even know existed. I know one experience, and I never asked my mom, but this goes to show what type of person he was. I never asked my mom what he said when he recommended me for radiology school at Daniel Freeman Hospital, and I didn't finish. He never said anything to me about it because that's who he was, and I certainly wasn't going to mention it over the years. Looking back now, I guess I should have. I'm sure he was disappointed, but years down the road, I believe I redeemed myself in 2 ways. First, redemption. My son Brandon was born, his buddy Wuddy Wooda, or his Brandon Good News Bell, as he would say. I think he thought Brandon could crawl and walk on water. He for sure could do no wrong in his eyes. We then got to see another side of Bill, the grandfatherly one, the person that played with him as a baby, danced with him as a toddler, and sat by him at swim lessons at the Y and Flaky Jake's restaurant afterwards. Or he and my mom driving down the freeway when we moved to San Diego and hanging out for the weekend. He was there. He was always there. He showed he cared without ever having to say it. It was in his actions, in small, subtle ways, but certainly not small in support. When I didn't have a car and he let me borrow, for those of you that know him, the BMW, I'm sure you remember that license plate, for at least a year until I purchased my own car, or when he would ask if I was okay, and I would say yes, even when I wasn't, but just by him asking, it made a difference. I knew he cared. Redemption number 2, when I became a teacher, I taught in Compton and Watts. I'm currently assistant principal in Watts, a community he supported and loved for years. And he would always remind me, you sound like a teacher in Watts. You sound like an assistant principal in Watts. You're taking care of things. He was proud, he told me. He also told me in one of our recent chats how proud he was of Brandon, what a fine young man he had grown up to be. He was mannerly, smart, responsible, and dependable, and raised by the best mom in the world. Okay, he didn't say that part. I said that part. But he did say I did a great job raising him. When he began to need more of our support, we were there without question or hesitation, quietly offering assistance while he was losing some of his independence. He still wanted to drive to Kenneth Hahn Park and Fatburger, but I told them that wasn't such a good idea, but I blamed it on other people driving crazy, and not that his skills had diminished. We talked, we laughed. He asked about every family member, going down the list. He pointed out all of his friends walking the track from his kitchen window. And I would ask him, how do you know who that is? But he could tell the silhouettes. More than anything, he missed getting out on his own, walking the park, going to listen to music, and catching up with friends. Although he was a loner, he was not lonely. He struggled at times, but also persevered. He said he was appreciative and grateful, and even said he loved us. He never used that word. We knew it, but he never had to say it, and we never had to say it, but we knew it. He once asked what he had done to deserve such care, and I simply said, "You were there." We helped him keep his dignity intact as we cheered him on, just as he had done for us for over 40 years. I'm almost finished. My family will miss the emotional support through it all. We will miss knowing someone is simply just there, because it does make a difference. We will miss the daily early morning check-in phone calls and the several conversations throughout the day. I will miss the appreciative smiles and the winks after sharing home-cooked meals and treats over the years. I will think of him whenever I go into Trader Joe's, Amazon Fresh, California Fish Grill, and Sprouts, or his favorite treat, Fat Burger. But mostly, I will remember he was there through it all. Good days, bad days, and just because days. Swim lessons, basketball practices, games, and tournaments. Family birthday parties of all ages, many graduations, weddings, divorces, and holidays. Thank you. We will be forever grateful for the lessons, for the stepping stones, the quiet guidance, the support, the laughter, the love, and a bond, a friendship that stood the test of time and lasted long enough to turn into family. Farewell, Bill. We will miss you. And next up is his friend, Frank Kinney.
Well, can you hear me? Anyway, my buddy, for over 30-some years, and we met right here on this corner over here at a jazz festival. And through him, I met another buddy, which is no longer here, which was Lanny Ross from New Orleans. And what a character. But my buddy Doc, he was one of a kind. We laughed, we ran all over the country, went to China, Monterey several times, New Orleans several times. But he was a quiet guy. He only let you know so much. I used to get 3 or 4 calls a day, 2 or 3 times a night. But, you know, I dealt with him. He only told you so much. A lot of things he didn't want you to know, and a lot of things I find out that he didn't want you to know. But that's all in good, you know. And in his last few days, I went to see him in the hospital. It wasn't a pretty thing, but, you know, we talked much as possible. And I just want to wish him well, him and his family. And a lot of good jazz we spent listening together all over the country. A lot of artwork. He was into his art. A lot of stuff he didn't want you to know about with the art. But I finally broke down, and he finally broke down and told me a few things, but, you know, which is good. And to his family, I'm just going to say a few things. He was a good guy, very quiet, very personal, and which is good. I found out a few things, but I'm not going to let y'all know. I'm gonna keep that to myself. I'm gonna take that to my grave with me. But overall, he was a hell of a guy. Very personal, very quiet. And to his family, I wish all you guys well. And that's all I'm gonna say about my buddy. So anyway, we're gonna bring up Mr. Raymond Cash, and which is his nephew. I learned through his uncle, through him, and we got to be friends. Pretty nice young man, nice family. So you come on, take the stage.
Appreciate that, Frank. First, I want to thank, where do I begin? Clint Rosemond, Miss Yvette Coleman. Thank you guys both for helping to lead this service for today. It's been huge for myself and for my family. I also want to thank Mr. Bill Coggins for being here today. Miss Elena Gilliam, that was very beautiful. Also, Miss Kathy Tate, thank you for your words. And also, Mr. Henry Franklin, the skipper and crew, thank you all for being here as well. This is my first time here at the world stage, but not my first time in Leimert Park. My relationship with my uncle is a little bit unique in that he is a very private person, even with his own family. He's very private. Some would say too private. But he did love hard, and he didn't always tell you, but he showed you. For me personally, my life was very much in the wind when I got to LA right around 2009. The market, as some of you may know, the market had just crashed, and so a lot of us had scattered trying to figure out what was going to come next, how we're going to eat, how we're going to survive, and so on and so forth. So I had to move to LA from the Atlanta area and was trying to figure out, you know, where my career was going to go next. And at the time, a few things didn't go as planned, and so I ended up in a position that I never thought I would be in. And being as hard-headed as I am, I never wanted to call anyone for help. And so my mom kept pushing me to call Uncle Skookie. And I hit him up a couple of times, didn't expect anything at all in return. And then several months had gone by before he called me back. And he said, yeah, you know, your mom tells me you're in LA now. What's going on, man? And yeah, let's get together. Let's get together. Trees. That's what he used to call my mom, Montrese. And so one random day, he tells me, you know, why don't you come through Sunday? You can watch the greatest team in the world play on Sunday. Now, me originally being from Cleveland, Ohio, I said to myself, he can't be talking about the Browns. But the Browns happened to be playing the Raiders that day. So we go to his place. I go to his place, and we had a great time that afternoon, and he got to know a lot about me, my personal history, a lot of the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then also vice versa. We talked about a lot that first day, and we connected in a very it was just very organic. And he was like, you know, I like you. You know, I like you too. Huh? You know, I can't believe we haven't done this before, you know. And so I certainly appreciate his enthusiasm for music, and he certainly appreciated my musical education and background knowledge when it came to John Coltrane. It was one of my biggest jazz iconic, favorites of all time. And so he was very intrigued that somebody at the time my age would know that much about John Coltrane and his history. So I think that connection brought us closer together. And that day, he had me go down the street, get some Chinese food, and bring it back. And we watched the Raider game. And he said, that's a crazy story. You're telling me, your life up to this point. I'm actually going to be leaving town next weekend. And I tell you what, if you want to crash here for a little bit, you can. It's totally up to you. And I said, all right, cool. I appreciate that. Just let me know how much I need to pay you a month in rent, bills, whatever. I got it. He was like, nah, don't worry about it. I got 2 rules. Take your shoes off when you come to the door, and you're on your own for food. And I'm like, that's it? He's like, that's it. So I'm like, it's got to be a catch. Nobody's this nice, right? And so he says, so we started talking. And I say, so where you going? Where you headed? Oh, I'm going to Cuba. And he said it was like, he said Cuba as if I'm going to San Francisco or San Diego or around the corner. Oh, just, right up Cuba. And I said, are you allowed to go to Cuba? Can you get into Cuba? And he said, oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And he used to go to Cuba to donate his time, medical profession, for women's health programs they had in Cuba. But it just so happens that same week they also had the Cuban Jazz Festival. So it all made sense, right? It all made sense. But I was always in awe of who he was just as a human being. My mom would tell me all these stories, about Uncle Skookie out in California, And, you hear about these stories about my grandfather, his older brother, who passed away when I was maybe, my youngest son's age. So I never got a chance to really get to know him. So the time I've had to spend with Uncle Skookie, it really replaced that for me. He's probably the closest person to a grandfather that I've ever had. So, but anyway, so this Cuba story. So at the time, I had just met my wife now, Jennifer, and I, not really being a shy person, I'm trying to impress Jennifer at the time. So he says, the day that he leaves, a few days later, hey, got my stuff, hit the airport. I'll take you to the airport. Okay. So he says, by the way, that whole sob story you told me about your life, and things ain't going your way, and all that. He goes, the only reason why I'm letting you stay here, right? I said, no. He goes, because of your mother. That's the only reason why. It ain't because of that sob story you told me. It ain't because you swear you fell on hard times. It's not because you think the universe is against you and all that other bullshit. Everything that you said that day, it's not because of any of that. It's only because of your mama. And so I just want you to know that before I get on this plane. Don't burn my house down. Don't touch the artwork. And don't screw up. So I was like, I got you. So the next day, I'm trying to impress Jennifer. I'm like, why don't you come over to my place? I'll cook you dinner, we can hang out, yada, yada, yada. Set the fireplace up, I dim the lights, polish off all the artwork. She comes in, she's like, this is your house? I'm like, well, I'm in a transitional period right now, but it is for now, So I always had to thank Uncle Skookie for giving me the the time I had to help. I always call it capture my wife. Yeah, so that really came in handy because I did my best to try to impress her through him. Come over, let's talk to Uncle Sweet. He would sit and he would do stuff like close his eyes, fold his arms, or close his eyes and put his hands behind his head, and he would pull dates, places, names from early 1940 St. Louis politics to early Harlem Renaissance people that he knew of, who knew of us, who knew of our family. The late, great Miles Davis, who was a great friend of his older brother, my grandfather, who they all went to elementary school with in East St. Louis, Illinois. All of these remarkable stories that he would educate me on to remind me that, our family shares a sacred place in history. And it's not talked about much. It's not mentioned much. He went in further to tell me stories about how his father, my great-grandfather, Dr. Henry Hudson Weathers, out of East St. Louis, Illinois, St. Louis, Missouri, was the first black surgeon in the entire, one of the first black surgeons in the entire nation, and who was very well involved with not just the Harlem Renaissance and other places like in LA where you saw black professionals unite and be able to raise up the community. But I didn't realize how much of a role that he played in the medical profession as well in terms of his surgical skill set and how that paved the way for not just black doctors, but doctors of all over, which that he performed what we called at the time the figure 8, which was a special sewing technique to sew up a certain part of the aorta. And he had perfected that, which is why he had performed that surgery. So it was just really good to hear all this stuff about our family. And like I said, the man was a historical and he would pull out dates. And I'm like, how do you remember so precisely this, that, and yeah, it was remarkable to see him do that. So I just had to share that. I'm not going to try to get too long-winded, but I will share one more story. I could sit up here all day and talk on this microphone if allowed, but he has really blessed me in ways that you cannot imagine. I probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. But one thing that comes to mind is he never had a problem with telling you. Well, two things. He always had a certain way of allowing you to figure out whatever issue you had for yourself. If I would go to him for advice and say, hey, how do I grasp this? Or how do I navigate through this? Or I want to work on this deal. How can I put He would have this uncanny way of asking certain questions to allow you to figure it out for yourself. And that still sticks with me to this day because I do the same thing to my son. Another thing is after a while, Jennifer and I started to spend a lot of time together. And he comes to me and he says, I'm thinking of having a birthday party for my 74th. And I was like, okay. He goes, yeah, I think I'm gonna hire a caterer. They're gonna come cater it. We're gonna do like the whole thing. Frank's laughing. And I was like, okay. He goes, yeah, so, if you could just, make yourself, just disappear that weekend, that'd be great. And I was like, say, excuse me? I said, not only are you not gonna, don't you not realize I'm a trained chef? Like, are you not only are you gonna throw this at me but not offer it to me, but now you're gonna tell me that I'm not even invited. So he said, well, yeah, you got a lot on your plate, and the universe is weighing down on you, and you got all this stuff going on in your world, and I don't want to put too much on your plate, nephew. And I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing here, and I appreciate that. So I tell you what we're going to do. You're going to let me handle this. I will quarterback the whole show for you. So I wrote him a menu, and we went and got, set the place up, and, white linen and napkins and the whole nine. And I had Jennifer, who she worked the front of the house, and she, did the cocktail service, and I'm in the back, grilling this and sauteing this and doing this. And it was a really, really great evening. And we had several of his friends come, and, we shared so many stories that night, but two people who were there, a woman by the name of Naomi and her husband Dio, who Naomi went to high school or grew up with Jennifer. And at the time, I hadn't really met them before, just heard of them before. And it was really good to connect with them because at this dinner party, Naomi came up to me afterwards and said, Chef, everything was really remarkable. It was great. Such a great time. Thank you so much for having us. Just curious, what restaurant are you at right now? I'm like, well, right now I'm trying to figure out what the next place is going to be. She goes, our catering company, she does all the, she's basically the director of the catering company. They do everything from the Oscars to the Grammys to the ESPYs. And then she goes, we could use a chef. We could really use a good chef. Why don't you come down to the kitchen, Monday, Tuesday, and let's have a discussion. So I looked at her and I was like, really? And I looked back at Uncle Skookie, and he looks at me, and he never really could wink, right? He would give you the whole. So I looked at him, I was like, all right. And the whole time, he was testing me to see if I was going to step up and take the job. He was testing me to see if I was going to knock it out the park. He was testing me to see if I was going to be personable enough to come around and shake hands and greet, meet, and this, that, and the other. He was testing me to see if I was going to seize the opportunity once it presented itself. And that's what he did for me that night. He used his birthday party to give me this opportunity. And from that, my career took off, and it's been a blessing ever since. But that is just one of many opportunities and blessings he has given me and my family. So I could sit up here and give you 1,000 more, but I'm not going to take too much of your time. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I appreciate everyone coming here today, and all the love that I see in the room today says a lot for me, and on the behalf of my family, thank you. Thank you. Next, I would like to offer up Mr. Bill Coggins.
First of all, I want to say I'm an old guy. I'm 95. I look better than I really am. I'm going to do this two ways. First of all, I'll talk under the remarks and reflection side before I read the obituary. I don't really know how long I knew Bill. I started working in Watts, after I came back from living overseas in tail end of 1966. I was hired by Kaiser Permanente to develop a community service program, which I did, and it still exists today. It ended up being on 103rd a success. One block away was the Watts Health Foundation. And I can't remember when they actually set up shop. I know I was involved in going to meetings and the planning and so forth, And there was a lot of stuff going on in the 60s. Because I came back to the States in tail end of 65, probably October or November. So I was really disoriented to America. But I got involved in Watts. That's another long story. And somewhere along that time, I met Bill. I think it was fairly early. I really can't remember. But along the way, I met people like Brenda Shockley, who I barely remember, because as she told you, she worked for it was a war on poverty program funded by OEO. I think our USC sort of monitored the grant. It was the Office of Economic Opportunity, and it funded the South Central Multipurpose Health Services Center, which was really a prelude to the Drew Medical School that exists today. A lot of action was going on, a lot of action. So I don't know exactly when I met Bill, but I think that we had 2 points of connection. One, we worked a block away from each other, like many people who worked in the community. We would eat lunch at a place called the Relish House, which is probably about 2 or so blocks away from where Bill worked, and maybe about 3 from where I worked. And of course, we talked about everything. I really can't tell you, how many times a week or whatever, but we talked a lot. Another point of connection I had with Bill, because as you heard, he was a jazz fan. And my deceased brother, Gil Coggins, is a jazz pianist. Yeah, and he met Miles when Miles was about 16 in St. Louis or somewhere. So Bill knew about Gil Coggins. Here I am, all the way from New York, and this guy knows about my brother and a lot of other jazz people. So we connected on that level. So it was both on people helpers in Watts level and then the jazz thing. By the way, if I might do a little editorial here, a lot of people talked about how Bill was very quiet. Well, I could say that about myself too, but I sure can talk. When a person is quiet, you don't know the other side. Today I'm learning some of the other sides. I just heard the young man Ray tell me that Bill was his spiritual father. He might as well have been your father from what he gave you. It reminded me of when I was a kid in Harlem and how people schooled me, and I didn't even know what the hell they were doing. But it bore fruit. It bore fruit. We have to think a lot about heritage. We have to think a lot about ancestry. We have to think about being a collective people. And I am dead serious about that. I'm connected a little bit to the lady Tracy, who I had never met before, because she worked in Compton. At one period of time, I was working at a psychiatric clinic in Arcadia, but every Thursday I would spend time in Compton because I was working on obtaining a credential for LA Unified that I never used. It's called a personnel services credential. It was part of a game plan that I had. And actually, the only time I've ever used it is when I was developing a strategy to let LA Unified know, hey, I'm really one of you, only because I got the damn credential. Yeah, it's part of the political way of doing things. Frank Kenny talked about jazz all over the place. Well, I grew up around jazz. I grew up in, well, I'll put it this way. I had to write a short bio in a little project I was involved in. And initially I just used my professional bio, and the person said, "Come on, Bill, get a little more personal." So here's the first line of that bio, if I can remember it. My name is Wilfred D. Coggins. I'm the younger and only brother of Gil Coggins. I was born, raised, and acculturated in New York City's famed but black-contained ghetto dash Harlem. You can't forget that Harlem was a ghetto. I lived it. And it had two sides, an enriching side and then a very toxic side. People forget that we had a version of apartheid that was erratic, informal, but definitely existed. We as young toughs, would go through the invisible boundaries between black and white neighborhoods and tear down the white tenants only signs. We would battle each other as black gangs, and we battled the white dudes. So that's what I came out of, and survived because of people like Doc took the time to see something in me and push me on. And I am forever grateful. Okay. Oh, let me say one other thing. I'm going to start on the obituary now. And I sympathize with Tracy when she started to cry. And I have a thing about that. I must tell you, I work as a psychotherapist, so I have a slightly different view about human behavior. Very often people will cry, or they will stop themselves from crying. It's almost as if they want to apologize. But here's my thing. As I read this biography, I don't know how I will react. From one moment to another, you do not know what your being will be until you be. So here goes. Dr. William Rolfe Weathers, 83 years of age, died on December 9th, 2021, in Los Angeles, California. William was born at Homer G. Phillips Hospital on October 5th, 1918, in St. Louis, Missouri, the third of four siblings born to Dr. Henri Weathers II and Alice May Gentry Weathers. William was affectionately called Skookie by his family and friends in his hometown of East St. Louis, Illinois. He attended Lincoln High School and East St. Louis High School, where he was among the first black students to integrate. He then attended Howard University and received his BS, his Bachelor of Science, in 1960. Where William, who was known to his friends as Doc, was active in the German Club, Chemistry Club, Campus Pals, and Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. After obtaining his undergraduate degree in zoology, he attended Howard University College of Medicine, concentrating on radiology. Doc served as an intern at Freedman's Hospital in Washington, D.C., and completed his residency at Harbor Hospital in L.A., in Los Angeles. He later served as chief radiologist and head of radiology department at the Watts Health Center until his retirement. After retirement, Dr. Weathers continued to serve South Los Angeles by being on call at Martin Luther King Jr. Hospital. One of his greatest joys was serving in the National Health Service Corps and working on the Native American reservations in Oklahoma and other states. Doc enjoyed living in Los Angeles because he loved the outdoors. He played tennis, pickup basketball, and enjoyed walking in parks and beaches throughout the Southland. Doc also loved track and field, attending the Olympics in Brazil and China, and California state track meets, including San Diego, where he rallied to support his niece and great-nephews. One of Doc's strong suits was being a great conversationalist. He was a person of many words, and each word had many meanings. Doc was a voracious reader and an avid supporter of the arts, including music and visual and performing arts. He particularly loved jazz, loved live jazz. He was known to attend jazz festival, the Monterey festivals around the world and throughout the United States, including the Monterey Jazz Festival and the Detroit Jazz Festival and the New Orleans Heritage Jazz Festival. Anywhere there was music in LA and surrounding areas, he was there too. William was preceded in death by his parents and his brother. Dr. Henry Weathers III. He leaves behind to mourn his brother Eugene Delmar Weathers of Washington, D.C., his sister Alice Ann Weathers of Evansville, Indiana, his beloved nieces Avril, Shelley, Alicia, Lena Weathers, and cousins, lost my place, and cousins Marcia and Eric Gentry. Also mourning are his beloved nephews, Edward and Frederick Weathers, and grandnephew, Raymond Cash. Joining the cast of those who will miss him are his cherished friends, including Frances Crawford, her daughter Tracy McDamon, Clint Roseman, Ernie Fields, his godchild Kelly, and her father, Dr. Sylvester Booker, and a host of jazz lovers and musicians around the world. Well, I got through it. Give me some help. Sometimes these legs don't work too good.
I need just a little light, just for a second. I can't see the buttons.
So what I've learned so far is that I wish I had known Dr. Weathers. And I wish he had come to see us down in Orange County. I would have loved to have seen that smiling face in the audience. Mm. Thank you for your patience. We're a beautiful family, and friends. This was requested by Yvette, and I think it's perfect and one of my favorite songs. I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In a small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's bright and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. Oh, I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's light and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon. I'll be looking at the moon. I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Elena. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here. And I want to thank all the people that are watching live on the World Stage streaming service. I particularly want to thank the family as well for allowing us to do this memorial and this celebration the way we do things in LA. Thank you for that. I also want to thank my dear friend Kathy for all of the help that she did in helping this thing fall in place the way it did. Clint and I are doing a eulogy, and we looked up the definition, and I would say that he's already been eulogized because everybody here has pretty much taken my words, my sentiments and my thoughts, because we all knew Doc in a similar way. But at any rate, this is my part. Doc and I met some years ago. We don't really remember where or when or how that happened. We know it was probably around some music. We probably had some mutual friends, and it just sort of happened kind of naturally. I had just retired. Well, I hadn't just. I was on a job that I worked for like 25 years traveling. And when I retired, I could actually start doing activities in my own city. And once that happened, I was everywhere. And everywhere I went, there was Doc. And I was like, oh, what's going on with this guy? And again, it was mostly around the music. However, there were lots of other intersections with me and Doc. One of them was the theater. Doc and I sort of belonged to a couple of little theater groups around town where we'd go from very small theaters like the Edgewater Theater to large ones like the Pantages. We used to travel a couple of trips to New York City with the Jazz Twins, and we really went for the music and the food. However, Doc and I would find ways to kind of sneak off in the afternoon and go to a Broadway matinee. And we just sort of liked the same kind of stuff outside of the music. Then we had these other little everyday kind of occurrences where Doc would go to Starbucks and he'd stop and get a grande black coffee to go because he was going to have iced coffee all day long. And that's how he did that. And we'd be outside at a table talking about politics, etc. Doc would pass through and drop a few pearls and then carry on. Never sit down with us, just say a few words and get on about his business. He also did that at diners, where he would go and have his oatmeal. Sit up at the counter, engage the staff. On the way out, he'd pass by our table, drop a few more pearls, and go on about his business. Those were the kinds of things that took us outside of the music and got to see who he was and what motivated him. Then we can't forget the trips. Like, we never traveled together. We would just be at the same festivals. We'd be at Monterey or we'd be at Detroit, except for the New York trips with the twins. We'd pass by each other, like give each other our impressions of what was going on, reflections of how we enjoyed the music, and advise you on who you might want to see in the next event. And those were those kind of wonderful musical trips. Okay, but then the cool Doc, the one that would come up to LACMA, he kind of like saunter through the urban lights and stop at that first few rows where the ladies were. And he would stop and give us each our own little personal, not that group hug and that shared hello. He just like go down the line and say something to each one of us. Miss Coleman, you look nice today. I said, thank you so much, Doc. Miss Hill, I see you. He had something for each one of us, and we felt so special I was like, that's Sly, man. And to do that little smile and saunter on off, sit with the boys in the back. But Doc was also a really huge supporter of Jazz in the Garden, which I used to do in my backyard before the pandemic. And he was really conscientious about letting me know the next day, sending an email, appreciating the art, appreciating the musicians, just kind of cool about responding and doing, letting you know how much he appreciated it. By the way, Doc was really good about letting you know what was going on in this city, either culturally, musically, politically. He would let you know. The only way you miss something in this city is if you did not open up your email from saydoc@msn.com. That's the only way you were going to miss it, because you were going to be well informed. Doc didn't flaunt his degrees or his profession. He just was. CB said he was a man of many words. However, several of us already said he didn't have words about himself. He didn't use those words to tell you anything about himself. He kept that to himself. And then he'd tell you a little bit, just give you a little hint of who he was. And it wasn't about him, it was his reaction to art, or his reaction to music, or his reaction to his friend, the ghost back there. You kind of knew who he was and what he was thinking by the way he reacted to something else. So, in the end, we have our stories. Some of them we live shared with our friends and families, and some of them we live alone. And so we have our memories of Doc's story that will kind of last forever. Those memories have no expiration dates. We can put any one of them, pull them off the shelf, relive it in our minds, and still be fresh and meaningful and delight our spirits and bring us joy. We don't cry because it happened. We smile because it did. That is so cool to me, to think of Doc and smile. Now that Doc's story is written, I like to think that the last words of the last sentence of the last paragraph will read something like, "Now that was a good life." So, as Gregory Porter would sing, ain't no love dying here. Why? Because I'll be seeing you in all those familiar places, and I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be thinking of you. And so it is.
So I have to follow all of that. Yeah, no, I didn't make out the program. Yvette made out the program, put me last. Yeah. I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. You know, it's like Miles Davis, the story goes that Miles Davis and Wayne Shorter walked 52 blocks somewhere in New York, didn't say a word. Got to the destination, and Wayne looked up at Miles like, well, you know, how come we didn't talk? Miles said, "It's all been said." So maybe that's where we are, huh? It's all been said. I think so. I really think so. I'm just going to, you know, fill you in. I'm not going to take more than 5 minutes. And let you know a little bit about my relationship with Doc. I first knew about Doc many years before I actually met him. The connection actually goes back to my Uncle Buster. Now, I don't think anybody in this room knows who my Uncle Buster was, but at any rate, he was Wayman Smith's father, and he had a relationship with a man named Hots Weathers. I bet you there's nobody in this room knows anything about Hots Weathers either, except that guy, maybe, right? Okay. So at any rate, I used to hear about Hots Weathers when I was going back to St. Louis from Los Angeles in the back of my Uncle Buster's car, and he was talking to his buddy Dan Bowles about politics and what they were going to do in St. Louis and all the big stuff that was happening and this and so forth. So about 20 years later, because that conversation occurred in like 1954, about 20 years later, I was at my cousin Wayman's house, and I saw this picture on the wall. There's this guy standing up parade style in the back of a Corvette, or in a Corvette. I said, "Who is that?" He said, "Oh, that's Doc." I said, "Doc who?" He said, "That's Doc Weathers. That's Hots Weathers' nephew or whatever." I said, "Oh, okay." Fast forward another few years, I'm at a jazz event, and I see this guy standing in line, and he looks back at me and says, "That was a hell of a solo, wasn't it?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's your name?" I said, "You look familiar." He said, "My name is Weathers, William Weathers." I said, "Huh." I said, "I knew you from St. Louis." And he said, "Oh, you did?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I saw a picture of you on the wall." And he said, "At Wayman's house." I said, "That's right." Yeah. So that's how Doc and I first got connected. Yeah, that's a long way around, isn't it? Right now, Doc would be preparing for his main event of the year. It happened not to be a jazz festival. It happened to be March. Thank you very much. Yeah. You couldn't, when this time of year came around, don't call him, don't go by there, don't send him a telegram, don't do anything. Leave that man alone, because he's going to be in front of that TV watching whoever play whoever and do whatnot, and for as long as it lasts, until it lasts, and then he'd come out of the cocoon and and he'd talk about it. But until then, he'd hardly answer the phone. Number three, I would like to just mention, we almost lost Doc to an event in 2009, I believe it was. Doc and I were cabin mates on the Playboy Jazz Cruise, the only Playboy Jazz Cruise there ever was. And we stopped, it had first stop in Puerto Rico, or one stop there. And Doc and I got off and went to dinner at a little restaurant there. We walked up and down, went through the curio shops and whatnot. Went to this restaurant, and this, the person who waited our table was just a gorgeous human being. I just have to say it like that. She was maybe 19, 20 years old, gray, green, blue eyes. I mean, and Doc was kind of swept. To the extent that he was trying to figure out how maybe he could lay over and the boat could come back and pick. I said, "No, don't work like that, Doc." No, you got to be honest. So, needless to say, we made the boat. But he was kind of taken. He was kind of taken with that lady, and help, huh? The other thing I just wanted to mention to you was that Doc had this thing about food. Of course, now he was a Midwestern guy, and so, I mean, it was meat and potatoes, pork chops, and, blah, blah. And Then every now and then, you'd hear him say, man, I sure wish I had some trotters. Trotters? Know what those are? Pig feet. Yeah, pig feet. Yeah, one of the trotters. And yeah, trotters, pig's feet. Yes, trotters. Yes, trot. You got it? Okay. Trotters. And then the other thing he would come up with out of the blue was, I think I'm gonna drink me some brown liquor. I thought all liquor was brown. But no, for him, it had to be some special brown liquor. It turned out to be Jack Daniels, but it's just, that was his way of expressing it. The other thing I learned from Doc was that he had a real deep interest, abiding interest in bluegrass music, and I learned something from him. He turned me on to a group called the Carolina Chocolate Drops. I got an amen somewhere. Yeah, Rihanna and Giddens, right? Right. Okay. Oh boy, I mean, we might have a little revival up in here. Yeah. Well, and one of the favorite tunes that he liked that group sang was called Cornbread and Butter Beans. And the line went, cornbread and butter beans, and you across the table, eating them beans, making love as long as I'm able. That was Doc. So you didn't know that side of Doc. But I do. Then the other thing, there are a couple other things, and then I'm through. Walking in Marina Del Rey, we both ran into some very nice people. One had a dog that used to do work over at the airport. The dog would, one of those comfort dogs. You go with people who had apprehension about getting on the plane, they could pet the dog and whatnot. So, and the lady happened to have a great art collection, and she invited us over for a picnic, and that became a regular thing, and we got introduced to her friends, and so that became a regular event, going out to the marina to various picnics that they would have, especially around the holidays. I think that those are about the main points that I wanted to make about Doc, and I'm just going to leave you with this real quick, and this is for us, because Doc, if you didn't do this already with Doc, it's too late, but I'm going to tell you this is what my father left with me, and it's called Do It Now. It goes like this. It says, if with pleasure you are viewing any work a man is doing, if you like him or you love him, tell him now. Don't withhold your approbation till the parson makes oration and he lies with snow white lilies o'er his brow. For no matter how you shout it, he can't care a bit about it. He can't hear the words of kindness you've just said. So if you think some praise is due him, now's the time to slip it to him, for he cannot read his tombstone when he's dead. More than fame and more than money is the comment kind and sunny, and the hearty warm approval of a friend, for it gives to life a savor. It makes you stronger, it makes you braver, and it gives your heart and courage to the end. Do not wait till life is over and he lies beneath the clover. If you love him, slip it to him. Now's the time to let him know that you are his friend until the end.
Test. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Winston, and I'm very honored and privileged to be here today to say goodbye to an old friend, but really it's like saying hello because his spirit lives within us. He was the aficionado's aficionado, as you've heard from many of the speakers, as they alluded to his passion for the music and for the art. I was living in a very small space a few years ago, And I had all of these plants, and I didn't have anywhere to really house them. So Doc came over with his hatchback, and he made several trips from that spot, which was right here in Lamert Park, to his home. And he was house sitting basically all of my plants. We're talking about 80 to 85 plants. He had a green thumb that was like no other. And so there's just something, Chet and I always talk about this. Chet likes to work in his garden too. There's something so therapeutic about turning over some soil and working the land. Doc was so accomplished that you might even think of him as a Renaissance man. He could talk to you about the arts, about the ecology, the economy, fashion, just any topic. And he was so well versed, I think of him as almost like a Paul Robeson. Paul Robeson spoke 27 languages, orator, football player, lawyer, great vocalist, etc. So Doc really was a man for all seasons when you think about it. And one thing I want to just close with is that, as people have said, he was brutally honest. He could look at you and address you. He didn't mince his words. And so it was always warm and genuine. So I always have those recollections of Doc. And we'll be seeing him soon, like in the morning. Doc has taken his ride to the other side. We all have to go at some point. We don't know when and where, but we must make that transition. And it's been a pleasure knowing Doc Weathers. And I commend him for even surviving East St. Louis. That's no easy feat. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Yes. Once again, I want to reintroduce these great musicians. This ain't no garage band. These are world-class musicians. First of all, on piano, we have Theo Saunders. Theo comes from a great musical and artistic and theatrical family, but he's got his own marquee value. The leader of the band, I always tease him because he's got this nautical motif. He calls himself the skipper, but I see no vessel. I see no assemblage of a boat, not a canoe, not a dinghy, none of that. But he is, that's right. He's the captain of the crew. Henry Franklin. Whether it's Pizzicato or he's Boeing, he gets his gas at Arco. On drums, we have a young man who just stepped right in because Tony Austin wasn't able to make it. But of course, Yayo has worked with the skipper on many occasions. And he's just a nice guy and a very gifted drummer. Yayo Morales. And out front on tenor saxophone, he's head of the Jazz Studies Department at Cal State Dominguez. He is an author, recording artist, and he takes care of business with that horn. He is a giant, in case you don't know. Georges Avery. And once again, we want to acknowledge the great vocal stylings of Elena Gilliam. Let the healing begin.
I was just going to re-mention the guys in the band, but everybody knows Theo Saunders. Everybody knows Theodorus Avery. Everybody knows Yayo Morales. And I'm Henry Franklin. Thank you so much. I guess that concludes the event. Yes, it does. And Yvette's going to let you know about coming events.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much, Skipper and crew. And thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you. We're going to adjourn now, and we're going to head over to my house. And if you don't know where I live, Kathy is in the back, and she has that information written for you. So we're going to head right down there now, okay? Thank you.